This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Tezvav. Well, the learning for this week has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf, as the Chosi the Neshama of Ramay Shmuel Chaim Levi Bernstein, whose yard was yesterday on Yudal Cheshvan, the Siyat Dishmaya of the learning of the Nedarim Chabura, should bring the Neshama Ramay Shmuel Chaim Levi higher and higher, closer and closer to the Kisei HaKavod. Each word of Torah, Talmud Torah, Kenegei Kulam, slowly allowing the Neshama to soar to higher in places in Gan Eden Shel Maila. And we pick it up on the bottom of Yudalid Amid Beis. Yesterday we learned a Mishnah which is unique. And the Mishnah says, Koinem Shani Yashin, Shani Daber, Shani Mahalech, or someone says to his wife he's not going to have relations with her, he's included in Bal Yachal Devaroi. And the uniqueness of the Mishnah, as we mentioned yesterday, I believe, is that these sound more like a shvuah than a neder, number one. Number two is that it doesn't sound like this tangibility. It doesn't sound like there's an item that he's making a neder on. He's saying, I'm making a neder, I will not sleep, I will not talk, I will not walk, etc. We have to see exactly what this means. So we begin the Gemara, which the Gemara teaches us. Itmar. And this is a very important statement, as this statement is going to carry us through basically the duration of today's shir. The Brisa says, I'm making a neder. My eyes from sleeping today, if I sleep tomorrow. Very important. So we have a unique type of neder that's being introduced over here. This is what we would call a tanai. There's two halves of this neder. There is the isser, the neder part, and then there is the tanai part. Of course, the neder part only kicks in if the tanai is fulfilled. If the tanai is not fulfilled, the neder does not kick in. For example, in this case, in the event that I sleep tomorrow, then I cannot sleep today. But let's say I don't sleep tomorrow, no problem sleeping today. Let's say I do sleep tomorrow, then there is a neder from my sleeping today. But if I don't sleep today, and I sleep tomorrow, there is no problem. So again, we have a neder. The isser is my eyes should not sleep today, based upon the condition that I sleep tomorrow. So the man really has a choice. Either don't sleep today, and then you sleep tomorrow, and then you have that the condition of sleeping tomorrow was fulfilled, but the neder of not sleeping today was sufficed as well. Or don't sleep tomorrow, and then you're allowed to sleep today. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yudah Marav, Al Yishan Ayoim. So Rav Yudah Marav says, we have a unique case. We have a Tanai, that if you sleep tomorrow, you're not allowed to sleep today. So says Rav Yudah Marav, don't sleep today. Why not? Why can't I sleep today? Shema Yishan Lemachar. You know you can't sleep today, because then maybe you're going to come to sleep tomorrow. And when you sleep tomorrow, fulfilling your condition, you are not allowed to sleep today. So don't sleep today in order to not violate your neder. That is the sheet of Rav Yudah Marav, which is going to be the main event for today. Rav Nachman Amar, no, sleep today and we're not worried. You won't sleep tomorrow. What's the big deal? Tomorrow you'll keep yourself up. And Umayde Rav Yehuda, so that's the machlaik as whether you're allowed to sleep today. Rav Yehuda is Umayde that what? This is the flip side. Now the Tanai, the condition is first. If I sleep today, then what? Then there is an isser for me to sleep tomorrow. In the first case, there was an isser for me to sleep today if I sleep tomorrow. Here, if I sleep today, there's an issue for me sleeping tomorrow. And therefore, what does Rav Yehuda admit? Moide to, and we'll explain in a moment why. Sheyishan hayom, that in this case, there is no problem. You're allowed to sleep today. Why are you allowed to sleep today? Says the Gemara. The reason being, ki loi mizdayer b'tinah. When are we nervous that you're not going to be careful as we move over to Tezvav Amid Aleph? On a Tanai, on the tomorrow's issue of a Tanai. If I sleep today, then we're worried that tomorrow, in case A, you might not be careful to not sleep. Avol be'isser. But in the second case, what's the uniqueness of the second case? Like we just said, the uniqueness is that in the second case, the isser is second, the tanai is first. If I sleep today, there's an isser from me sleeping tonight. Avol be'isser, says Rav Yehuda Mizdahir, he's for sure going to be careful. The only concern is in case A, in which the isser is first, the tanai is second. So in that case, you're worried you might not do the tanai. But in case B, in which the isser is second, the tanai is first, in that case, we're now worried one will indeed violate his neder. That is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. That is the machlokes of Rav Nachman. That is the case in which Rabbi Yehuda had bitzu. Now, what in the world this has anything to do with our Mishnah? Here it goes. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah on the second line of Tezvav Amir Aleph. Tanan, Koinam Shani Yoshein, Shani Mahalech, Shani Medaber. The case is in the Mishnah. So says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, what is the precise case of the Mishnah? If you're going to tell me that what is the case of the Mishnah, like the Mishnah says, Shani Yashein, that the person says, my sleeping, my walking, my talking, can't be. Me have a nidra is such a statement on neder, but now we learned in the Mishnah. The shvuas are more chamer than nedarim, and if this sounds familiar, it should, because we had this a few days ago on Daf Yomi base. Shashvua is chalos al davar sheish by mamish, ve'al davar shein by mamish. A shavua you could swear even on a non-complete entity. So on a shavua would work even on a davar shein by mamish. Ma shein can't be nedarim, then a darim has to be a davar sheyesh by mamish. Veshina davar shein by mamishu. Says the Gemara, sleeping is not a tangible entity, and therefore, says the Gemara, how is this going to be a case that the neder could work? Ella, so therefore the Gemara reverts, and says the Gemara, Nubshat Amar Koinam Eini Bishina, says the Gemara, that the case is referring to that one says, I'm making a neder from my eyes from sleeping, Ve'i Koinam Eini Be Shina, says the Gemara. That is the case in the Mishnah. And that's going to be the story in which it will be a neder. So now, explains the Gemara, 1 second. So what do you say? I'm making a neder from my eyes from sleeping. Vidlay of Shiura, says Gemara, 1 second. If you give a blanket statement, my eyes will not sleep. Mishav kinalei. Do we wait ad da'avar iser bal yachal? Do we allow him to go in his merry way, and whenever he eventually is over, whenever he eventually sleeps, we consider it that he's going to be over on bal yachal? Ask the Gemara, how could that be? What's the problem? Explains the Gemara, you know what the problem is? Ve'amar Rav Yochanan shavua shalai isha, and himself makes a shvua that he's not going to sleep shalosh yom for 3 days. What's the halacha? Malkin, I say, we beat him, we smack him, we give him malchus. V'yashin la'alter, and he has to go to sleep right away. For what reason? That it's an impossibility to stay awake for 3 days straight. So we say, what are you doing? The neder, the shvua, is not chal. Therefore, right away, we force you to go to sleep. So ask the Gemara, just like the shvua is not chal, so to the neder should not be chal if he left it open-ended and he did not say in what scenario how long the neder is. Now, we should quickly point out over here that there is a little bit of a chiddush going on over here. And the chiddush basically is that there is something called a shvuas shav, a shvua for naught, which is in this scenario an impossible shvua. But who told us that there's something called a neder shav? Doesn't seem like we have such a source for that. And the Ran explains, which I just tried to find, I couldn't find, but the Ran explains that what's going on over here is that it's a borrowed term, that just like there's an issue of a shvu shav, we assume that there's an issue of a form of neder shav, a neder that's impossible to fulfill. So ask the Gemara, how do we allow the neder to keep on going? Ella, says the Gemara, Da'amar koinam eini bishina lemachar And of course, now we understand what this has to do with our original discussion of Rabbi Yehuda, because we're learning that this is the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah is, I'm making a neder from my eyes from sleeping today if I sleep tomorrow. And now we can understand what this has to do with Rabbi Yehuda. And ask the Gemara, Ha'amrit kol bi'isurai mizdahir. Ask the Gemara, but you said that in such a scenario, this is the case of Isser. The Tanai is first, the Isser is second. And a moment ago, we said on the top line, the Rav Yehuda admits Isura mizdahir, that when it comes to the Isser portion, a person will be careful not to violate it. So why does our Mishnah say that there is a Bal Yachal Devarai? We just learned the Rav Yehuda's Maida that in such a scenario, you would be careful not to violate the Isser. Ela Pshita, says the Gemara, you're right. So says the Gemara, you know what's going on over here? The Amar, you made the Iker Neder if you sleep tomorrow. And therefore, the problem is that if we allow him to sleep today, we're nervous he's going to violate the Tanai portion of the Neder for tomorrow. So now explains the Gemara again, but 1 second. But let's say he doesn't sleep today. He stays up. So now is there any problem sleeping tomorrow? No. Kinayim lamachar. Now when he sleeps tomorrow, there's no issue. My bayachal devarayika. So why did the Mishnah say a blanket statement is bayachal? So rather, what must the Mishnah be teaching us? Mishnah must be teaching us that he slept today. And then the Mishnah is saying there's a Bal Yachal because we're nervous he's going to violate and not stay up tomorrow, the day of his tonight. Alma isei dinayim. So what do we see from our Mishnah? We see that we allow him to go to sleep. Utiyofta de Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda said we do not allow him to go to sleep today because we're nervous he's not going to fulfill tomorrow. And we see from the Mishnah, not that way. Answers the Gemara, Kika Tani Di'i Noyim. You know what the Mishnah means? The Mishnah doesn't mean you're allowed to let him sleep. The Mishnah is telling you the story. Noyim, that he actually went to sleep. Then we have to figure out what to do. Teretz number 1, reconcile Rav Yehuda with the Mishnah. Ravina Amar Lo'ilam Kidiktani. Says Ravina, really, it's the way that you taught it. Umay Bal Yachel. And where is the Bal Yachel? If you're just talking about sleeping, as we said, there's no tangible entity. Medirabban, on a new design, new creation. Something called Bal Yachel, being over in a neder on the Dirabanan level. Ask the Gemara, really, does such a thing exist? Umika Bal Yachel and Dirabanan, about 15 lines at the bottom of the Amid. Yes, says the Gemara, Vatani, is learned to the Braisa. That's really mutter, but people act as if it's forbidden. You cannot be making in front of them. Why? It's not a real yachal devarai. This is a yachal on a dirabanan level. So too in our case. So teretz number 2 is what was the whole starting block of this discussion was that in the Mishnah, so it says Bal Koinam Shina. How can you have a neder on Shina? It's not an entity, says the Gemara. The answer is on a derabanan level. So now Tanan, 10 lines to the bottom. The first one is Tanan, another kasha on Rav Yehuda. What's going to be the now that we have the Gemara clear, the Gemara now is going to multiple times ask the same question Rav Yehuda, and each time it's going to be the same give and take, the same answer. So let's get to it. Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, that what? You're not allowed to have benefit from me until Pesach, meaning it's a neder for you to have benefit from me to Pesach if I go to your father's house until Sukkot. So again, we have the neder portion first with the Tanai second. So says this Mishnah, if indeed they went to the father's house for a Pesach, then you can't have Anah. What do we see that if they did not go, then what is the halacha? There's no problem deriving benefit. And what did Rav Yehuda say? Rav Yehuda said, we don't let you sleep on day number 1. So to over here, we should not let you get benefit with the concern that maybe you're going to violate the neder tomorrow afterwards. Amar Rav Abba, that's what's going on. If you went before Pesach, then there's a malchus, lo yaholcha, then it's still aser. But it's asura ba'alma, just an iser, there's not going to be malchus. Says the Gemara, very nice, but Ema Seifa Achar Pesach Bal Yachal Dvaroi, the Seifa that Brisa Mishnah says that after Pesach is Bal Yachal Vidalo, it's not if they Pesach 1 second, if they didn't actually go and get any benefit, if they didn't get any benefit for a Pesach Mika Bal Yachal, El Pshita Disani, must be that they got benefit. Alma Misani. So what do we see? We see that you're allowed to get benefit, which of course runs contrary to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda said, just like Rav Yehuda said, you're not allowed to go to sleep with the concern that the next day you have an issue. So to over here, to Yofta de Rav Yehuda, as we turn over to Tezvav Amid Beis, answers the Gemara, Kikatani, the Iyas Nahi. You know what that Mishnah meant? The Mishnah didn't mean that you're allowed to get benefit. The Mishnah meant that if you got benefit, the same thing. Just like we answered the previous tarot, it doesn't mean that you're allowed to go to sleep. It means if you went to sleep. So to over here we're answering that you're not allowed to actually do this. It just means if you got benefit, then then you're including the Bal Yachal Devari. Tenan, we learned that the Mishnah continues the Gemara in the second line. It says, you can't have benefit until Pesach. You went and you can't get benefit. The same deal. If you didn't go, then you're not having any issue. The same exact teretz like we just said. Difference is going to be, is there malchus or not? Continues the Gemara. Meisvei. Kikar zu alai hayoim. Again, the exact same kasha. This kikar, this loaf of bread is forbidden for me today. If I go to a certain place tomorrow, then you can't go to that place. So again, the same kasha, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the problem? Rabbi Yehuda said, we're not concerned that you're actually going to go. Mikatani, excuse me, Rabbi Yehuda says, we don't let you eat it today because we're concerned you might go tomorrow. We don't let you sleep today because we're concerned that you might sleep tomorrow. So why in this case did it seem that you're allowed to eat it today? Answers to Gemara, Mikatani, Oichel, Ochal Katani. Meant that he ate doesn't mean you're allowed to actually go eat. That if you eat, then you're included in the Baal Yelech. Asks the Gemara, actually the Gemara quotes the end of the Brisa. Halach Ariza Bal Yachal. That if you went, you're included in the Bal Yachal Devarim. Mahalech Loi. So what do we see? We see the Kasha de Rabbi Yehuda. The same Kasha, we see that you're not allowed to go and do it proactively. Amar, we see that right, you're not allowed to do it proactively. No, you really are. Says Rabbi Yehuda, of course, always a little bit of a dicha of an answer, but says Rabbi Yehuda, once the Brisa said, it said the same thing in Mahalich. You're right, it should have said that you're allowed to go, but when it just mimicked the wording in the Reisha. And we conclude today's shir with the bottom of Tesvav Mebei. Says the Gemara at the two dots. If someone makes a neder from having enough from his wife, from sleeping with his wife, the neder stands. Ask the Gemara the obvious question, a question I'm sure has been bothering many since we started today's shir. How is a husband allowed to make a neder, saying to his wife, you're not going to sleep together? The husband has a biblical achiyah min ha-Torah to be together with his wife. One of the basic and primary obligations of a husband to his wife is to give their food, clothing, and oinasai, which, okay, we have the Gemara in Ksubis debating which is which, but however you slice it, it's definitely a obligation of a husband to sleep together with the wife. Lo yigra, he cannot decrease as the basik. So answers the Gemara, a fascinating answer. We're just going to read the words. We can't really discuss the deep lamdis. But Oimar, you know what the case is? You're right. One cannot make his wife forbidden. Because to make his wife forbidden is going contrary to his basic obligations of the ksuba to be with his wife. But you know what he could do? He can make himself forbidden. But Oimar hanos tashmishcha alai. the man says, you're right, I can't make you usher. You know what I could do? I can say that I'm not going to get benefit from you. Now, it's true, we'll just point out that any time, if he's not getting benefit from his wife, that means his wife is not going to be able to be sleeping with him either. But because he's wording it in a way that allows it to stand, that's why it's going to work. Ask the Gemara one second. Says the Gemara, and therefore, it's the husband saying that he does not want to be able to have relations. His wife still is allowed to, but of course it's not going to be able to happen because he's then going to automatically get benefit. But that's the case, and Nedarim will stand. Amar Rav Kahana, Tashmishi Alecha, Kaivinasa, Umisham why Dishabudai? If someone says, I'm making my tashmish also to you, that you can't do, because you have an obligation to her. But but if he says to his wife, "Ano of tashmish is also to me," then also because we never feed something to someone that is forbidden to him, and he's saying that he can't get benefit from the tashmish, and that's the way that the net is going to stand, and that's an Ashir. So comes out, going full circle, that in the Mishnah, the end of the Mishnah, we understand the case of Tashmish is going in this case where he makes himself forbidden. The beginning of the Mishnah, in which he said, Kainam, he's making Neder on the sleep. When all the dust settles, we have two different ways of learning the Mishnah, but the point is that either it's going to be Chal on an entity, or what's going on over here is that he's saying that it's a Tanai, that he's not going to sleep if he doesn't do something else, not a regular case of an Neder. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah on the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.